Today's episode is brought to you by...
Hi, I'm Jeff Goulding and I'm a Liverpool author.
And I'm Kieran Smith, the Liverpool historian.
Together, we've been working on a book entitled The Untouchables, Anfield's Band of Brothers.
It's a great story about one of the greatest sides in Liverpool's history who won back-to-back titles in the 1920s.
Yeah, this is a team that is absolutely packed with incredible characters. Men who fought on the battlefields of Europe in the First World War and returned home to claim 2 league titles in a row.
And it's due for release in the UK in September. And thanks to our friendship, the Liverpool Connection podcast, it's also going to be made available through them in the United States.
Hello, it's Gibbo and Hanno from the Anfield Rap, and we just want to say a big congratulations to everyone over at Austin. The Liverpool Connection podcast has reached 100 episodes, which is decent going by anyone's estimation. Me and Craig were on one of the first ones, but you didn't let that derail you. We carried on regardless, and since then, you've done well. Had some proper big names on, including Craig Johnston for the 100th. What a boss one that is! But yeah, it's good going to keep anything going for that long. We know that.
Big names, Craig Johnston, Craig Haddon,
all the Craigs,
all the Craigs. Yeah, no way, well into everyone there, and obviously we hoped just before the pandemic hit that we'd be in Austin and be able to have a drink with you all. We hope we'd be able to sort of reschedule it by now, but obviously we haven't been able to do that. But hopefully sometime soon we'll be able to, and to maybe do one live as well whenever we're over there. That'd be good, wouldn't it?
Doing admin on here. 100, enjoy your 100 episodes, enjoy the celebration, and congratulate yourselves. A big pat on the back. I've heard you've got Neil Atkinson on 101, so you might not make it to 102. But
that's the end. Anfield Rap shuts it down by accident.
But it's still one to raise your bat to the pavilion and say well in. So well done, all of you. And as Craig says, we're really hoping to see you all soon.
Hi, it's Keith Salmon in the Isle of Man. Just wanted to say a massive well done to the guys in Texas, to Daz and to Steve, and also Nicky in the background does a lot of the technical stuff for them as well. It seems such a long time ago since I was on the podcast. I had an amazing time with them, really enjoyed myself. I think I probably still hold the record for the longest one. Guests have got better, some amazing people that have been able to follow me on there. Some highlights for me was like listening to Mark McVeigh and Joe Blott, some brilliant people, and Craig Johnston, he's far better than me to celebrate the 100. Massive well done, guys. Keep it going, really proud of what you're doing, and look forward to catching you up in Liverpool soon, watching the Reds. Take care.
Hello Daz, Steve, hope you're both well. Just wanted to say congratulations on your 100th podcast. Keep up the good work, lads. It's great. Cheers.
Hello to everybody at the Liverpool Connection, and thank you for giving us your time to join you on our podcast with the old McVeigh Foundation. Good luck on your 100th episode. Sending all our love from Liverpool. Congratulations.
Hiya fellas, Steve Hunter here, club commentator for LFC. Hope you're doing well. Just wanted to say massive shout out, massive congratulations for your 100th episode. You both do an incredible job, with Liverpool FC, spreading the word all over the world. You'll never walk alone. Up the Reds!
Hello to Daz O'Connor and all the team over there in Texas at the Liverpool Connection podcast. Congratulations on achieving 100 podcasts. It was a great privilege for me to appear on the show a number of months ago to promote my book, The Lost Shankly Boy. It was always a pleasure to talk to Daz and the boys over there, and I hope that the podcast goes from strength to strength. I hope you achieve another 100, and I hope that I'm around to see every one of them. So congratulations from this side of the Atlantic to you over there on achieving 100 podcasts. It's a great achievement. You'll never walk alone. Keep it going.
Hi Daz and everybody at the Liverpool Connection podcast. Just wishing you a happy 100th episode. And from Gary Gillespie, all the best, mate. Keep up the good work. You're doing a fantastic job. Bye now.
Hi guys, this is George here, the voice of Anfield. I was very pleased to be on your podcast in this last series, but I'm amazed to hear you've done 100 of them, because I know how much work goes into each and every one. So there's only one word, isn't there? Congratulations. Well done. Keep it up. Here's to the second 100, and I hope you'll have me on one of them if I'm still here. And in the meantime, congratulations once again, and don't forget it. You really will never walk alone. Well done.
Hey, happy birthday, Liverpool Connection podcast, 100 episodes, incredible achievement. Well done, everybody involved. Thank you so much for when you had me on. You were so cool with us. Hopefully, Liverpool continue to dick teams in the eye like we just did to them Manchester United bar stewards up the fucking Reds, and happy birthday.
Hello and welcome to the Liverpool Connection podcast. This is our 100th episode. I cannot believe we've actually made it this far. We've had some amazing guests on. We're about to have another amazing guest, but we'll get to him in a second. I would defo like to thank my co-host Steve for coming on the show and making it the show that it is. And to me missus, Nikki, who does behind the scenes, she's the smart one. She does all the editing, all the production, running of the website and everything. So, 100th episode, chuffed to bits. Thank you, everyone, for sticking with us. And let me get to our next guest. Might as well. What can I say? 5 league championships, 1 European Cup, 1 FA Cup, 1 League Cup, 40 goals, 39 assists in 271 games. It's former midfielder for Liverpool Football Club, Craig Johnston.
Hello.
Our 100th.
Woohoo. We made it.
Woo!
There you go.
And he's all the way from Australia, which they're now out of lockdown. So he's raring to go.
Yes. Well, we were really lucky, Australia, that we weren't hit when everyone else was hit, especially in Europe and America, and we didn't really feel the brunt of it until the Delta variant came along, and then that is much more savage than the original one, and we've been in lockdown for a couple of months, 3 or 4 months, so. Just got out. It's 2 reasons to celebrate.
Stretching your legs a bit.
That's it.
Well, I am going to let Steve start off I'm gonna keep saying it, our 100th episode. Go on, Steve.
Well, Craig, thank you for joining us. I know it's the time difference as everybody. You're drinking coffee, I'm drinking a beer, but it's all good. So thank you for coming on.
And I'm drinking water.
Hey, for the 100th episode, gotta do it up. But, hey, so Craig, we were so happy to have you on, and you've had such a journey, just to even get to play football. Obviously when you were younger, you had a bone disease that you had to fight through. Can you kind of maybe share some thoughts about going through that? I know I read that. By chance, there was an American doctor in your area when you were getting diagnosed, and that kind of helped you through that time.
Yeah. Well, I was 6 years old, and I got into a fight coming home from school, and I kind of got beaten up. And when I got home, six years old, I went to bed, didn't feel well. And a week later, I was still in bed, and my leg was getting worse and worse and worse. And at the time, polio was a big deal. And the doctor came and he said, "Look, it's polio. We've got to get you to the hospital straight away." And that's what happened. So it was diagnosed as polio, and they were talking about and told my parents they might have to amputate the leg, which would have been a shame because it would have slowed me down on the wing. So what happened was there was an American doctor who was touring and lecturing on polio, right? And he said, well, give me a look. And he did. And he said, "I don't think it's polio. I think it's osteomyelitis. And, if you let me operate, we can save the leg." And that's what happened. So, and it's only next door to where I am now, the old Newcastle Hospital. And, that was 1966. And I remember being in the hospital, and the nurse, and if that rings a bell, 1966, that was the last time England won the World Cup, or any World Cup or European Cup. Black and white television. It was a long time ago, and the kids these days, and I'm 60 years old, 10 years older than probably you and Daz. But that was, the golden generation of football in England, and the Carnaby Street and the swinging 60s and the Beatles, all of that stuff was going on. And I saw that because I was in a hospital bed for months and months and months. And all I saw was old black and white television. So I had, a love of the game from that World Cup. And I told the nurses, no, you're not going to cut my leg off. I'm going to get out of this bed and out of this hospital. And if I'm ever allowed to run again, I'm going to run and keep on running for the rest of my life. And that's fundamentally what happened.
Do you think that just having that mindset at the very beginning, early on, helped you when you're trying to become a professional football player? Because I know it wasn't easy. You're trying out, you're getting in front of different people. It wasn't somebody came and said, "Hey, we need you on our team."
Well, you know what? Everybody's got a story back in their locker about something, and there's some dreadful stories out there, and the stuff that people had to suffer with. But mate, Steve, you're 100. Do I call you Mr. El Presidente or Steve?
You used to call me whatever you want.
I like El Presidente. It sounds.
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah. So that was my story, and 100%. That pushed me through. It got me back to school. The doctor said after they saved the leg, and mate, there's an awful scar on there. And if I had underpants on, I'd show you, but I don't, so I can't show you. Only kidding. I will show you. The star's still there, but the thing was, when I left the hospital 6 months later, it was you're not allowed to play team sport. You got to surf or play golf. So I went and learned to do both of those things. But somehow, because of that English football on Australian television, I just loved the game and the concept that you could actually play soccer and somebody would give you money at the end of the week, because that's what you did for a living, and I was kind of a grade A student, science and maths and all of that. I loved it. My mum was a teacher and a headmistress. So I was really good at school and I loved it, but I fell in love with a round ball, in a country that really didn't take to soccer, at the time. And there was one program on that was called The Big Match, and it was ITV, The Big Match. And so every week on a Monday night, after Alf Garnett, Till Death Do Us Part, you had The Big Match. And all the kids at school, and when I got out of hospital, 6, 7, 8, up to about 12, right? Every Monday night, that's what we'd do. So we became huge football fans, and we knew everybody back in the league then from this one black and white program a week that was on the ABC here in Australia. So it made us different at school. We weren't normal. I was never a normal kid anyway. I don't know why. I'm just not normal, and I would always think outside of the box. And the illness and me being out of playing with my mates and mucking about with soccer ball, that love just grew and grew and grew. And Mr. Presidente, I'm telling you right now, if it hadn't have been for that trauma in my early years, I would never have been a footballer. I would have been good at something, but it wouldn't have been soccer as we call it, or called it. But I'd never have been a professional. And playing for Liverpool, oh my goodness, it's the very thing that drove me on. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to show you the scar. Just in case you're not believing me, you're ready.
No, because, we had your good mate, Brucey, on.
Hang on. Yeah, what did he say?
Well, we had him dancing on his couch.
Okay, well, there you go.
And now we get to have you. This is awesome.
From there to there, when you're 6 years old, that's a bit of a scar. you know. So it's a true story. So that's 60 years ago almost. Well, 50 years ago.
Now, do you get to pick up the Sheilas with the scar on your leg as you would it somewhere else?
Oh, mate, I say it's a shark bite, you know, and I'm a surfy dude. Mate, the chicks love it. Chicks love it. You know, and when I was pretending to be a footballer, I'd say, oh, that was a big bad tackle, you know, studs over the top, you know. So, you know, wherever you were, you just make it up and get sympathy, you know.
That's quality.
Yeah.
You know, you had the opportunity to play under, you know, Paisley, Fagan, and Dalglish. That had been such a great. I mean, obviously, that's one of the glory periods of Liverpool prior to recent times here. Take us kind of through some of the differences in those three guys, just from a manager standpoint.
Yeah, well, three very, very different characters, three very different personalities, but all with the same philosophy. And that all came from the Shankly era. Mm-hmm. Paisley and Fagan were men of few words, especially Bob Paisley. But Bob didn't need to speak too much because he went bright red when he was angry. And he started to smile when he was happy. So he didn't have to speak. But you just knew if you were doing the right thing or the wrong thing. And Joe was fairly similar. He wasn't in there long enough, but they were all the backroom team for Shanks. Mm-hmm. And I don't have to talk about Kenny Dalglish because he was a spitting image of Shankly, but like a mini-me, a love child years later. And their styles were, like I said, hands off. If I didn't say hands off, because when you say the glory years, you know, Shankly had left this incredible overarching philosophy of what it means to be a person who plays for not this team, that plays for these people. These are people called Scousers. Shanks picked that up early on. And I think if you're a Scouser, it would be very difficult to stand up in Liverpool and say, I see the good part of you. Because all the Scousers, they shut up, sit down, you know, what are you talking about? But when a Scotsman had the choice, and Shankly had the choice of going to Middlesbrough or coming to Liverpool, and the first thing he said was, give me an army of Scousers and I'll build you an army to beat the bloody world. And he meant it. He meant it. Because he saw in the Scousers something different. And, mate, there is something different about Scousers, let me tell you. And I've been all over the world many, many times. And the Scousers are these unique box of tricks that you only get in a place called Liverpool. And the funny thing is, just 26 miles up the road in Manchester, you got Manx. They're another alien species. And the two are completely different. I can say this as an Aussie. You couldn't say this as a Manx or a Scouser or even a Londoner. There's another box of tricks. And when I say box of tricks, as human beings, as a species, as a group of people, they think different, they talk different, they want different things, but they all want to be the best soccer team, you know, which reflects on them as the best people. So it to me, as an outsider, it's always been incredibly fascinating, the tribal nature of football and what it really means to people. So I love that part of my adventure and my years there. And before Liverpool, I was actually at Middlesbrough. Mm-hmm. And Middlesbrough, again, a different kettle of fish. I don't know whether you ever heard of Chubby Brown, Roy Chubby Brown, El Presidente.
I have not, no.
No, okay. Well, he's a comedian from Liverpool, and I suggest you clear the kids out the room and you put on Roy Chubby Brown.
Okay, because, I'm writing it down.
Roy Chubby Brown. He is hilarious, but he's really coarse. Anyway.
No worries.
What I was getting to is you asked me about the three managers, and I tell you who tells the best story of the lot. And I know this is a true story because I was there. And it was a game when It was at Loftus Road, QPR, and Harry Redknapp's story. I was with him on a plane to Ireland not too long ago. Anyway, he tells me the story about how Joe Fagan was in charge, but he'd seen what, the most successful manager of all time before Ferguson just got a few more was Bob Paisley. And he was amazed that even when Joe took the reins, now and again, Bob was there. But anyway, so Joe Fagan was watching the game in the director's box at Loftus Road, and Harry was sitting behind him. And then this other bloke, sat next to Joe Fagan and started. So basically, afterwards in the director's box, Harry went up to Joe Fagan. Sorry, a little bit like Joe Biden here. I'm having a senior moment. Anyway, went up to Fagan and he said, Joe, he said, how you going? Well done, good victory, or whatever it was. He said, do you mind me asking who that bloke was? That your head scout you were talking to? And he said, no. He was an old army colleague of mine, and I hadn't seen him, since the war, or whatever. He said, that's why I was so keen to speak to him. He said, yeah, but you were hardly watching the game. How can you manage the team like that? He said, well, Dalglish was up front. He said, Souness was in the middle, and Phil Thompson was there with, who would have been in the days. The bloke, who was the captain of Liverpool when Phil Thompson was there? Emlyn Hughes. He said, Emlyn Hughes. He said, they're coaching the team themselves, right? So it sounds funny. It sounds funny, but was there tactics in the day? Was there data? Was there scientific evidence of a player's output and his recovery rate? Nothing like that. So it was just gut instinct based on, are the players giving as much as they can possibly give? And that was the litmus test. But he was 100% right, with those characters playing in those roles. But that whole thing was laid down by Shanks in the way he wanted to play. But here, in the heart, if you can see my heart, see my underpants, now look here, right? He wanted Scotsmen. So that's why he brought them down. And that's why he brought the big centre-half down. What's his name, Daz?
Hansen?
No, this is Shankly I'm talking about.
Oh.
Back in the day. The big, tall, Roy Yates.
Yeah.
Ron Yates. That's why you had a little bloke that's passed away not so long ago in midfield. He brought down with him a whole bunch of jocks that would just, get stuck in, at all heart merchants, and tough men. Name escapes me now. But that whole thing, right, and they were self-governing and self-captaining. There was no such things as superstars back then. Like Ferguson had the same instincts with Roy Keane. If you get a Roy Keane, and we've had a Souness, we've had a Steve McMahon, we've had Yates was the bloke in the day back then, but there's a couple of other really, really tough guys that Shankly brought down. And it was about how tough you were and about how disciplined and how professional back then. And I'll say to this day, I tell you that the two most professional people in soccer that I've ever been around in my life, and different people have different takes on what professional are, right? But here's my take, right? And I was a bit like Brucey. I was a bit exotic. I was a bit head in the clouds, because we come from a different culture. We think in a different way. Who do you think I'm going to say, Daz? You're a Scouser. The team I played in, there was two people that just jump out a million miles being professional. And we'll discuss that word. But I am answering your question, by the way, Mr. El Presidente, about management style. So these managers were the kind that only had very few things to say because there were such professional players in those ranks. And this wasn't Shankly days. My days, Daz, who's the two most professional players I've ever played with in my life and had anything to do with?
Phil Neal?
Sir Kenny?
No.
No?
Oh. And I played right in front of Phil Neal. No. He's very professional, by the way, but some stood head and shoulders. And he was a captain, by the way, for a long time.
I'm getting an old moment too. Oh, my God.
You're getting a Joe Biden.
Yeah. I think we all are. Yeah, my mind's gone blank.
Live for it. Get stuck in. Scream and shout at people that don't get stuck in. Die for it. Braveheart comes to mind. Come on, Daz.
Oh, my God.
I can just think soonness.
Huh?
For me, soonness epitomizes all that stuff. But.
Yes. Yeah, who goes and plays for Galatasaray against the other mob in the middle of Turkey and sticks a flag in the middle of their in their field and says, "Get that up here." Right? I told you, it's Braveheart, mate. That's where Suey was coming from, and still is.
Yeah,
one more.
Uh-oh.
Same box of tricks. Come on. We're talking about Shankly understanding the power of tough, hard men, right, that are professional. That means they never give in. They'll fight to the death. They can't see black from blue, right, until the job's done.
That you've played with?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I was about to, Tommy Smith was a hard
Tommy
man.
was just before me, and he was in his day. Okay, I'm going to tell you, same box of tricks, Kenny Dalglish.
Yeah.
Kenny and Graham, and here's your answer about the management of the day, right? Be it Fagan or Paisley. They had those two guys, and then at the back you had Hampson, and you had Lawrence, or you had Tommy Smith before that. But Phil Thompson was also of that ilk, let me tell you. Now the key thing is, and then the team's full of other youngsters and other, people from here, there, and everywhere, Ronnie Wheel and Sammy Lee, right? But with that backbone and that management and that philosophy and that crowd, that's what it stands for, and I think that we went right since basically I guess Kenny left the first time around, but I just see that coming back 3 years or 4 years ago with Jurgen Klopp. And I often said, when people asked, and they don't too often, when I was living in America, and now I'm back home in Australia, Klopp, to me, he did what Shankly did. He not only revved up the players and the board above him, right? He revved up the whole town because it was about that unique culture that had spent 30 years in the wilderness.
Well, it's like you just have to go back to, when Liverpool drew with West Brom 2-2 and Klopp took all the players to the Kop, and everyone's going out off their heads, other rival fans going, you just drew a game, but people don't get what he was doing. He's going, we'll fight tooth and nail for you. And he's very Shankly-esque.
Yeah, in his own German way.
Yeah.
But it elicits the same response from heart. It's all about heart, and they're the great managers, the ones that do that. Years later, I wasn't there, but years later, Liverpool were called Spice Boys.
Yeah,
remember that? Oh, yeah. So, and again, nothing to do with me. I wasn't there, but again, I don't think I was even watching in those days because I was struggling with what I had to do, which was find a job. So the whole thing is, if you compare them to what we said generations before, it's chalk and cheese. It's chalk and cheese in terms of this and that, you know.
Hey, you know, Craig, I wanted to ask you because you know, we've been blessed among our 100 episodes to speak some of your mates from, you know, the European Cup, the 1984 winners. And but I wanted to go back to your first real start was in that Intercontinental Cup against Flamengo. Obviously, you weren't on the right side of the score, but I want to just, you know, we don't talk a lot about just how that game came about and the experiences you had. I mean, you're coming into this team that's well established, and here you are playing against a different style altogether than what you're used to playing in England, you know?
Yeah. Oh, no, it's completely different. It was the World Club Championship against Flamenco in Tokyo, of all places. You know, I've got a good story about it. And Zico was playing, and a bloke called Nunes.
Yeah.
And mate, to be honest with you, we couldn't get near the ball. Even Sui and Kenny, they struggled. We all struggled. In fact, they gave us a football lesson, if anything. But apart from football, I'll tell you a funny story, right? I was keen as mustard, and you know, I'd done a lot of traveling, transcontinental traveling, because I live in Australia. You've got to. Right. So I was kind of used to it. Anyway, I couldn't wait to get out there and play against Flamenco. So, long story short, it was called the Toyota Cup because Toyota sponsored it, and the plan was that there's two Toyota cars that will be won by two players, right? On the day on the field, right? And yeah, one from each team. You know, one assumes. Anyway, so we got our butts kicked, but whatever. And when the I think it was Ronnie Moran or somebody said, bad performance. But as he walked, and this is not like Ronnie, but as we went out, he said, by the way, he said, you never stop running, and he smacked me on the stomach. You know, I said, he said, well, right, quietly, so nobody else could hear it. And I thought, oh, great, you know, because Ronnie Moran never says anything nice unless he really means it. But I didn't stop running, long story short. So I'm thinking, hang on a sec, I've won a car here, right? I've won a Toyota. Anyway, so they do the presentations, and I'm thinking, you know, Zico, by the way, was outstanding. Zico was outstanding. So they said, well, here we are, blah, 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 and score was this, and here's the trophy. By the way, the man of the match for Flamenco was Zico. And everybody claps, and Zico, and they go and he's looking at his new shiny car. And I thought, this is it. I'll get the car. Woo. So anyway, do you remember what the score was?
3-0?
3-0, yeah, 3-0. So anyway, so I'm thinking, oh, you know, and I thought, oh, I'll be a bit embarrassed, you know, this is kind of my first game, you know, big game, blah, 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 blah. So anyway, they said, yeah, welcome, and Flamenco's the winners, and the man of the match and the scorer of 3 goals, Nunes, like that. So I'm like, oh, no, Nunes has taken my car because he's deserved it. Anyway, he scored 3 goals, and so years later, and this was 3 years ago, I was in Orlando, right? And Zico was coming to Orlando, right, to do a big presentation or coaching clinic or something. Anyway, so he came to lunch at the golf club where I lived. And I said, where's my car? And he said, what? And I told him the story. He said, oh, Nunes. He said, look, Nunes, you know, he could do with some money. He's on his last legs. He said, maybe you could buy the car off him. So I said, oh, how much, you know? So anyway, it's a bit of a long story. You don't have to edit that in. You can cut that out. But anyway.
No, so we love these stories.
Nunes has got my car. You know?
Where does he live?
Sao Paulo. You get the Scousers after him, mate.
Yeah, I know a couple of Scouse mates that live in Sao Paulo.
There you go.
Maybe look that card up.
Yeah. Tell they can pinch his medal as well, and you know I'll have that too. Anyway, sorry, that was a long, boring.
No, it wasn't. That's a reason why we bring people like yourself on. To hear stories that a lot of people don't know about. I love it. And
Well, I'll keep them shorter. Next question. I just gotta shut this door. And you know what? I just have to pull my pants up properly because I didn't do them up before. There you go.
So you've been calling me El Presidente. So tell us how you got Skippy as your nickname.
Well, there was this show on Australian television called Skippy the Bush Kangaroo, right? And it's really like Crocodile Dundee. We only had very few shows. Later on, there was a shocker called Neighbours came out. But in the day, there was a show called The Magic Boomerang and Skippy the Bush Kangaroo. So I guess like my culture from England was English football through the big match. Europeans only knew Australians as Crocodile Dundee or the Neighbours or Skippy the Bush Kangaroo. So, yeah, they all used to take, or Roo was my name. Jack Charlton called me Roo, or the Kangaroo, because I always used to train in the car park. He used to call me the Kangaroo in the car park. Bobby Murdoch was another one. He used to call me Roo, which is with a Scottish accent. But, Skippy kind of stuck at Anfield. And, all the boys used to take the mickey out of me all the time and call me Skippy and, all of that.
I guess it's slightly better than Barney Rubble, I guess, right?
What's that?
It's slightly better than being called Barney Rubble.
Oh, yeah, Barney. Yeah, from the Flintstones.
Alan Kennedy.
Yeah, I know. Well, his nose was like that. He used to run like Freddie Flintstones off the Flintstone family. Yeah. Barney Rubble, that was him.
Going back to the car park days, because I wanted to touch on that as well. I mean, you must have spent hours upon hours in that car park.
Hours and hours a day, 4 and 5 hours a day, because I had nowhere else to go. And I had jobs to do. The apprentices left me their jobs to do, and they would pay me a little buddy because that's how I had to survive. So the whole story about that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
My parents sold their house to finance my trip when I was 15. And the first day I got there, the famous Jack Charlton saw me play, and we were getting beat 3-0 at half time. And he came in and he had to go at everybody in the dressing room. He said, "You're hopeless, you're rubbish, useless, awful." He said, "Where are you from?" I said, "I'm from northern New South Wales, Australia." He said, "Well, you are the worst footballer I've seen in my life." He said, "You'll never make it while your backside points to the ground now. F off." And I said, "What now?" Like, this is half time. What now? He said, "Yeah, now." And I was like, "Whoa, that's a bit strong." So I started packing my little bag up, and everybody's like, "Oh, that's a bit harsh." It was raining outside. I just arrived from Australia. I was jet lagged. I was wet. I was hungry. A 15-year-old. My parents had sold their house to finance my trip, and what Charlton didn't realise, or anybody didn't, it was a one-way trip. So now I had nowhere to go, and clearly there's a bunch of really good apprentices or trialists from Scotland and Ireland and Wales and England all trying to get one of those apprentice spots. It's very rare that a manager goes and watches trialists, but he just happened to be there, and that was my introduction to English football.
Well, what was the conversation, though, that you had with your parents? Like, did you just say, "Hey, I want to be a professional footballer. Can you help me out, get to England?" Because that's amazing in itself.
Well, back then, actually, it was a very simple conversation. my dad wanted to be a player. He's Australian, Dad, born in Australia. And years before, he'd gone overseas, right, to try and be a player. And he didn't make it. And Mum had gone over to London to be a teacher. And they didn't know each other, right? They're both 20 years old, and they met on the boat. And then Mum said, well, I'm going to London. And Dad said, well, I'm going to Aberdeen, right? If I don't make it, I'll come and find you in London. And he didn't make it, really. So he went, and then he hooked up with Mum, and they're living in Fulham. And basically that's how was the backdrop. And then Mum got pregnant in London, and she had my older sister, right? But then they were headed back home, but Mum got pregnant again, and they went to Craig Cottage, and Dad told me the story. Mum tells me today, and Dad rubbed his belly, Mum's belly, and said, my boy's going to come back here to Craven Cottage, and he's going to play here, like that. So then they jumped on the boat coming back to Australia and stopped at in South Africa, and Mum got a teacher's job at the school, and Dad got a job as a mechanic and a soccer player for the local Jewish club in Johannesburg. So that's where I was born, in Johannesburg. But Dad had this football history, and that's when they then went back on the boat to Australia. So I got back to Australia when I was 6 years old, right? So then the accident, my leg, and the operation and all of that happened. And then when I sort of really, really fell in love and wanted it so much, I would practice, egged on by Dad, right, who was he's the loveliest man in the world, but he wasn't that bright, but he loved it. Whereas Mum was really bright, and she wanted me to be a scholar and a grade A student, which I was, right? So when I really then got into understanding the English football, I thought I'd never make it in Australia when I had to get a job, like in a bank or, on the buses or in the mines. Most of my mates were in the mines. Mm-hmm. So I said, I want to go to England. And Dad was, yeah, go. And Mum was, no, don't go. You're a bright kid and you need your A levels, right? So I pushed Mum, and so much that she said, if you come first in science, maths and English, we'll pay your fare to go to England. And I studied like no kid had ever studied before. Science, maths and English. Every day I would figure things out. I love solving problems, figuring things out. So I did so well that Mum and Dad had to hold up their part of the bargain, but we didn't have much money. So they sold their house and moved to a much smaller one out in the bush to finance my trip. So that's how I got to England, 15-year-old. 1975, by the way. Black and white television was enormous. No internet, no iPhones. No, nothing. No, nothing. No, nothing.
The good old days.
The good old days.
But I love the story where Jack Charlton told you, to F off, and then you went to phone your parents, didn't you? And you kind of did a bit of a fib.
Well, I was kind of heartbroken, and when I left that dressing room, it was half time, and it was pouring down with rain. It was December, and I just left the sunshine of Australia and the beach, and my mates as 15-year-olds and girlfriends, and I'm now with mud and snow and ice, all in my hair, all in my clothes. I'm starving. I'm jet lagged. I didn't know the trial was going to be. I got a week to practice, right? I had boots that didn't fit because Mum brought them far too big so I could grow into them. I was like Flipper, the friendly dolphin, whatever he's called. Anyway, the point was that Jack Charlton was 100% right. compared to these elegant, sophisticated European craftsmen on the ball, 13, 14, 15-year-old kids, they were magnificent on the ball like they are. And they came from Ireland and Wales and Scotland, and they were tough and hard. And every time I almost got the ball, they just and I had blood all streaming down my knees, both of them. Right. So now I'm out in the cold. Now what'll I do? So I had to find where the digs were, and it was written on a scruffy bit of paper, Medhurst Hotel. So I didn't know how to get there. It's dark, it's now 7 o'clock at night, raining. And I was standing by a street light, and a taxi driver drove past and kept driving, right? And then about 10 minutes later, he's driven past again, and he must have looked at me, and he's come back again. He said, "What are you doing standing in the rain?" And I said, "Look, I don't know where this place is." And I showed you, it's Medhurst Hotel. And he said, "You're not a trialist, are you?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "How'd you get on?" I said, "Well, Jack Charlton's watching the trialists." He said, well, jump in, lad, jump in. I said, "Look, I've got no money. I haven't been able to change." He said, "You don't need money. You're in Middlesbrough now." He said, "How did you get on?" I said, well, Jack said I was really good, He said, "Well, mate, what's your name?" And I said, "Craig Johnston." He said, "Well, don't forget me when you're famous. I'm Billy the taxi driver, whatever." And he said, "I'll show you where the Medhurst is." He said, "That's where all the clever guys go." He said, "It's in a nice part of town, leafy suburb, blah, blah, blah." And he took, and then it's the nicest bloke, Northern England hospitality, like the Geordies in the Middlesbroughs. They're just classically kind.
Yeah,
until you're trying to take their job, by the way.
Exactly. and I mean, it's such a great story, Craig. I mean, it really is. Like, I'm surprised the movie has not been made.
Yeah. Well, it costs.
Well, yeah, it costs money, but I mean, the story itself from a 6-year-old to then with your leg to a 15-year-old, like knowing nobody, and then sleeping in a coal shed, and then practicing every day in a car park until you started to figure things out. That's what I love as well. You did it very mathematically as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Which really zoned me in, and I loved how you put it, as you say, into data.
Yeah. Nobody ever mentioned the word data back then, and I didn't know what data was, but I knew that I had a series of exercises to do based on the fundamentals. And the fundamentals were that Jack Charlton was 100% right. I couldn't pass, I couldn't dribble, I couldn't control the ball, I couldn't shoot like the other players could, or professional players could. But I knew that the ball as a perfect object was the answer. And that if you worked with a ball, that the ball doesn't make mistakes. The person using it makes mistakes. And the more you use it, the less mistakes you make. So with that little bit of insight, which was very similar to my, mathematics and science and English, tests that I'd created myself to get over to England in the first place, I set out and I created this in the Middlesbrough car park, because basically Charlton had told me to off, and everybody knew that I had no money and it was a one-way trip, and I couldn't go anywhere. So the apprentices, they all chipped in, and I was going to tell you about a nice chap who really helped me out in a minute, and I'll surprise you. The key thing is that I had to stay somewhere, and I wasn't allowed to stay at the Medhurst. So there was a coal shed out the back where I originally stayed, and there was somewhere down there, Ayresome Park, where I also stayed. But I had to hide from Charlton. So I would come in before Charlton came in, and I'd clean the players' cars, right? And I'd do the boots and some of the stuff, but they would all give me some money, And one of them was a chap, well, there's a couple of legends. One of them was an England World Cup winning left fullback, Terry Cooper, TC. He was at Middlesbrough at the time. And the other was just a good bloke and a hard man, and I've already talked about him with passion, is Graham Souness. So Graham Souness was actually at Middlesbrough at the time, and they'd heard about the roasting from Charlton, and they said, well, if you just clean our cars and do a bit of thing, we'll give you some money so you can bugger off back to Australia. So that was the thing. So I had to hide, and when they then came back from training the car park, so selected ones, their cars were clean, right? The dressing rooms were clean, the toilets were clean. They know I'd do the balls and the boots. So I was earning, enough money to pay for food for myself and to pay a little board and lodgings, so I could actually move on the side, undercover, if you like. So I could stay in the Medhurst. And like I said, I love solving problems. So the problems were I had to have somewhere to live or stay, and I had to be warm, I had to be fed, but I had to figure out the mystery of that ball. And it came down to what part of foot on what part of ball to what effect. That's all that football is about, soccer is about those things. And so I created in the car park, finished the story, a series of little obstacle courses that I call my mistake to attempt ratio. So I drew a goal, exactly, by the way, universal measurement. Do you know how big a goal is?
24 feet wide.
How 24 feet wide?
8 foot tall.
Correct. How do you know that?
I coach and I ref.
Good boy.
And I play.
Well, good boy, Mr. El Presidente. I'll take my hat off to you. Now, listen to this. I asked the same question of two blokes in a room, right, in Switzerland years ago when I was trying to get a standardized skills test together. I'll tell you who the two blokes were. One was Michel Platini, one of the most beautiful players ever, and in that winning Juventus team at the Heysel Stadium. And the other one was Sepp Blatter. One was head of FIFA and one was head of UEFA. And I asked them the same question, how big's a goal? They didn't know.
Well, you should have asked them how big are their wallets?
how big are manila envelopes?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. How big is your offshore account?
Yeah, there you go, mate. Sorry, I should have. You're right. But they didn't even know. I said, well, look, when I tell you, you'll remember it. I said it's actually 8 yards by 8 feet, right? And they went, oh, okay. I said, so what I'm trying to do is standardize a skills test all over the world, and call it super skills and blah, 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 blah. And they said, well, yeah, this was your experience in the Middlesbrough car park. So I said, yes. So I drew this with paint, and then I drew a penalty box exactly 18 yards by 44 yards. One's for Daz. How big's that little box in front of the goalkeeper?
Oh, come on.
6 yard box. Come on. Okay, here's another one. How big that spot that's a penalty spot? How far from the goal?
12 yards.
12 yards, yeah.
12 yards. So when you really look at it, right, I've got one for you, El Presidente. How about this one?
Man, hold on.
The arc of the D around the penalty spot. How many feet from the penalty spot is that arc?
It should be, that should be. From the penalty spot itself?
Yes.
So the top of it?
It's a 10-yard radius. There you go.
So, it's to the
okay,
top,
so it's a half a circle. Mm-hmm. So the thing, these are standardized. Okay, here's another interesting thing I'll say to you, right? And one of you will probably know. Did you know that every field in the world, soccer field, started off as a different size, and that most fields in the world now are all a different size?
Yeah.
There's no standardized soccer field, so there's no real data. So back in the day, I was actually working off a penalty box imperial measurement, 18 yards by 44 yards, that is the same everywhere in the world. So if you've got the penalty box standardized, it's the same in Zurich, in the Philippines, in Garston, on the Wirral, Sydney Harbour, and as Platini said, yes, in Paris Saint-Germain, and Blatter said, down the road here at FIFA House, you can see the penalty box. I said, bingo. I said, we need to turn that into a mathematical grid to actually create the coefficients of distance, accuracy, time analysis across the 4 skills of control, pass, dribble, shoot. And they said, what? Because Blatter's Swiss and Michel's French, they went, what? And I wrote it. Distance, accuracy, time, analysis for the 4 core skills. Said, what does that say? And I was holding in front of them. Distance, accuracy, time, analysis. D-A-T-A. What does that say? They didn't get it. Do you get it, Daz?
Yeah.
What?
Data.
Yes. Yeah, but they didn't get it. So I said, look, the kids are creating their own data. Oh, data. Oh, that's very clever. I said, yeah, I know it's very clever. So how come your clowns in the technical department are telling me it'll never work? I said, that's how I got out of the Middlesbrough car park, and I'm trying to pass it on to the rest of the world. Anyway, the funny thing was that both Platini and Blatter, they looked at each other and they went, you know what? He's right. Because when I came in the room, they said, we will never, ever endorse a coaching product. And everybody loves you, Craig, and we know you're this and in their accent, the kangaroo in the car park, I said, yes, we all know Jack Charlton hates you. Yeah. Everybody knows that story, but you're boring with us now. You're boring us. We will never endorse this program. And they said, the other reason we'll never endorse this program? He said, because Michel, being the Frenchman and the great player, he wants me to endorse the Platini program. And he said, and then Pele comes in here and says, look, we have this childish enthusiasm for the game, and we juggle coconuts, so we control the game and endorse the Pele method. And Blatter says, no. He said, and then we get Johan coming in, and Johan's a Dutch know-all. He knows everything, blah, 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 with his, Dutch accent. He said, so you're the Australian bloke, kangaroo in the car park, so we're not going to endorse your system. Anyway, so that was the start of the conversation. So now I'm drawing car parks, and I'm getting into imperial measurement, right? And I'm showing it. And then Blatter said, so hang on a sec. He said, tell me that one again about the arc of the D. And I said, okay, you get 5 balls. You put one on the corner of the arc of the D, and then you put another one on the other corner. And you put one right in the middle, and then you split the difference. So now you've got 5 balls equidistant on the arc of the D. And now there's that thing called the goalpost. What are they again? 8 yards by 8 feet. I've got it, said Blatter. I said, good boy. You've only been in charge of this game for 40 years, but there you go, good boy. So anyway, I said, now you've got to chip the balls onto the crossbar, right? I said, and I'm going to tell you something, right? You got to chip the balls onto the crossbar. I said, but when you start, the clock starts. And when you stop, the clock stops. I said, and every time you miss the crossbar, 5 seconds more goes on your time. I said, that's distance plus time equals accuracy, data. And then, and Blatter's gone, hang on a second, right? He said, this means I could compare myself to David Beckham or Zinedine Zidane with chipping right foot. I said, yes, but then chip left foot and see how good you are, right? And he said, yeah, I get your point. He said, so this is a training standard, not a methodology. I said, no, it's a standard. That's what I've been, coming here, and going all around the world with your coaches and teaching them it's a standard that everyone can adhere to as long as they've got a penalty box and a goal, which everybody in the world that coaches kids has got, right? So I told them the story, right? And I know this is a Liverpool podcast. I told them the story, and Platini loved this. I told them the story about training every morning in Liverpool. After training, right, Suey would get the balls. He'd put them on the arc of the D, right? Not in that exact order, but he would then go and chip the crossbar. Now, if Suey got 3, right, everybody would stop walking to get the cup of tea or the orange or whatever he had, after training, right? Because Kenny then would fancy himself against Suey. So then you would judge if Kenny's had a good morning, right, you'd put money on him. So amounts of pounds would change hands, not change hands. You'd say, well, I'll have 20 quid on Kenny, right? And if he got 3 and he had 2 shots left, there's a good chance Kenny would win. And you'd win $30 or 30 quid, whatever. So anyway, I told them that story and they loved it. So I then went through control, pass, dribble, shoot, and how you turn the penalty box into a mathematical grid that creates a mistake to attempt ratio over the 4 disciplines of control, pass, dribble, and shoot. In fact, hey, look, that's me in the background. That's when I was a fully grown-up male Liverpool player, right? But to get there, I had to get through the car park. So I'm going to tell you the timeline here, and then you'll understand that I'm not bullshitting, and that if you want, you can be a better player on a daily basis by putting in this thing. I'm going to tell these kids, there's this thing out there. It's a mystical, magical thing. You know what it's called? Hard work. Right? Do a bit of hard work with a ball and you start to love it, right? And I was in jail at Middlesbrough because I couldn't get home and I couldn't join in the gang. So this car park taught me how to get better on a daily basis. And you know what my measurement standard was? This is fascinating. It's not till I look back years later and understood, right? I had set myself goals every day on my mistake to attempt ratio for the 4 skills. So, for example, 5 targets in the goal mouth, 10 balls. I had to get all 10, right? Bang, 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 bang. And I couldn't progress and I left that in the target, right? Within the goal frame, right? And then I had these old church pews that I stole from the church. And being a good Catholic boy, the priest caught me at it one day, and Father Keogh was his name, he was Irish, and he let me get away with it because, number one, because I was Catholic, and number 2, because I said I was going to play for Middlesbrough one day. Anyway, another story, but I would dribble in and out of the pews, left foot and then right foot, but if I hit one of the pews, back to the beginning. So I had basically 4.5 hours to get home before the beans on toast stopped getting served at the Medhurst. And if I didn't concentrate on my daily regimen, then I could miss the beans on toast and I'd have to go hungry that night because I had boots to clean and showers and all of that and toilets to muck out and cars to clean. But my homework, soccer homework, was religious, and my mistake to attempt ratio was marked in number of minutes and half hours that I took to do these skills. So time frame here, just so you know, this is not bullshit. This is how I got out of the car park. Jack Charlton was 100% right when he said I was useless at football and the skills compared to the other kids at that age. I was 15. But when I made my debut for Liverpool, I was 17, I think 4 months, 2 weeks, about 3 days and a couple of hours, but who's counting? I made my debut against Leyton Orient. It was in the FA Cup. But so from 15, and I was, December 15, so that's 15 and 6 months, I was the youngest player ever to play for Middlesbrough in any game. So from Jack Charlton's perception, he then went on to Sheffield Wednesday, and a bloke called John Neal came in and said, "Who's that bloke with the rasta hair in the car park?" And they said, "Oh, it's just a kangaroo in the car park." And they said, "Well, is he any good?" And they said, "No, he's shit." So that was the end of that for a while. But the other thing I was going to say is that when I then got to 19, I got in the first team at Middlesbrough because there was a lot of illness at the club and they had to put someone in. And my debut, I played well, but then where I really played well was against Everton in the FA Cup, I think quarter-final at Ayresome Park. And I played really, really well. And then 2 years after that, then there was a bunch of clubs chasing me, 9 of them, and there was a headline in the Sun newspaper, nine clubs chase Johnston, and there was Man United, Chelsea. Funny enough, with the other clubs that my mum wrote to, but they didn't write back. Other clubs, London clubs, Arsenal, Spurs, I think, and then Liverpool. Oh, and Nottingham Forest. Brian Clough, I was his kind of player. So, long story short, so then I became the most expensive player in British football history. Was at the time. So that's the time frame from landing in Middlesbrough to being the most and being bought by Liverpool at that time. So whatever I was doing in the Middlesbrough, and this is again what I was trying to explain to Blatter and Platini, right? After spending 5 years running around the world, explaining to their coaches it's not a methodology, it's the truth, it's facts, it's data, right? So my point is, right, and I know I've been going on a bit, but as I got up to leave the table at Blatter's office in Zurich, right, he said, "You know what?" He said, "You've always been different to any other player I've ever met." He said, there's genius in this. And I said, well, that's why I'm so passionate, is I know it works and I'm trying to pass it on to every kid in the world that wants to get better. And it doesn't hurt anybody. It helps your coaches. It helps your technical. It helps everybody, right? He said, you know what? He said, I'm going to endorse this on behalf of FIFA. He said, and our new commercial department's over the road, their FIFA marketing. He said, I'm going to sign this, and so's Michelle, right? He said, go across the road and tell them I've signed this. And I said, thank you. And I was peed off with these people because it's taken a long, long time, maybe 8 years to get to this argument that he's never going to do this. So I said, well, thank you very much. I really appreciate it. So I got up, and just as I got to the door, Blatter said, and by the way, kangaroo in the car park. I said, what? He said, you know why I'm giving you this? This endorsement for a universal skill standard? FIFA universal skill standard. And I said, no. Why? And he said, because next time Pele or Beckenbauer or Cruyff, he said, or Platini comes into my office, he said, I can tell them who's the best player. And I went, bingo. But who's the best coach? Sorry, the best coach. Because it's the people with the data on the kids that tells the truth. And if you've measured, there's a saying in business, if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. So that's the fundamental, was the story of both the Middlesbrough car park and years later, getting this endorsement of FIFA.
Let me ask you, Craig, because I was going to ask you something else, but because you've been talking about data and analysis and setting up structures, you must have a certain appreciation for the way that Jurgen Klopp, Michael Edwards, Gordon have taken that type of approach to Liverpool nowadays? The tactical analysis, the data driven, or is that something that you're like, it doesn't always work, or do you share an appreciation for
that? We live in a world now where everybody's an expert in everything, do we not? Right. I'd hate to be a kid these days, getting all these opinions and all this advice and all this criticism. The facts are the facts. Science is science. The truth is the truth. I dealt in that car park with pure truths. Mm-hmm. So all of this data is a long time overdue. It should have come years ago.
Right.
Now, you know, again, there's a lot of sports hangers-oners, let's we call them, that use data in a way that's not appropriate and actually can tell lies, mm-hmm. right? And if you're a real football person, you can spot that. But there's a lot of old footballers, and I'm not going to name names, and coaches that have just resisted this for so long, mm-hmm. right, to their peril, right? Because if you're reading the right science and the right information, you know, and for example, I'm going to the nth degree here by saying not only I believe in it, but it's the only way forward. And I love what Jurgen's done. And, you know, people used to call me the Moneyball of soccer, right? You know, Moneyball, the movie about the baseballers. And I actually spoke to J.W. Henry, mm-hmm. right, and to Billy Hogan mm-hmm. about this when they bought the club. I'm years ahead. I am light years. I was so far ahead, right, of Platini and Blatter and FIFA, right? And I've spoken to Arsene Wenger about this 20 years ago, mm-hmm. right? There's 100 things that make up a player's performance mm-hmm. on any given weekend or Wednesday night. 100 things. Mate, I just got to do something. Someone's trying to get in. I hope it's not a burglar. You know, I just make sure.
Oh, man.
That's fascinating. It's fascinating, man.
It is, you know.
Because, you know.
Is it a burglar?
No, you know, as a Man United fan. Hang on, I'll just make sure he's gone.
Yeah, same thing. Same thing. United fan burglar.
Bugger off. There you go.
Yeah, hey, are you back? And the reason why I was asking you that, because, you know, obviously people can't seem to enjoy this team without worrying about who we can sign in the next transfer window. And it kind of pisses me off. And it's like, you're witnessing one of the best teams that Liverpool has ever had. Enjoy the ride. Why do you care about a transfer window in January or next summer or 2 summers from now? They have the analytics, and they're a lot smarter than we are when it comes to player assessments. And I was just like, so this has been very intriguing what your thoughts were about how their approach is to what we have to call the modern game, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's all incremental improvement, but there's 4 pillars of potential gain from a team or a player, you know, and it's always been physical, physiological, meaning your body itself, mm-hmm. tactical, which I was hopeless at, you know, and emotional, mental. And the rich ground is in between those pillars. And what I've created with my data is a new set of data. Mm-hmm. You know, what everybody else deals with now is current match data. And the funny thing is, like I said, if every field in the world is a different size, you don't have any standardized data as such because of the difference in size. And it's a whopping difference between the sizes. So I've created my own metric that then brings light, which is the quality of touch of a person's ability on the ball. So that's a new data set that will bring light to how far a player runs, how many tackles he makes. It fits in with how many correct passes the player makes, and if it's forward or backwards or sideways or piercing passes. So this is the next gen of data that then brings really interesting things to players' form. So, I've been working on it for 30 years, and I've been so far ahead of it that people don't believe it or trust it. And it's a little bit like Blatter and Platini after 8 years of proving to the coaches, mate, I know what I'm talking about. Would I be putting my reputation on the line to say that it's all about football? I tell you what, I'll go one step further. There's only 2 things a player ever does on a football field. Only 2 things for 90 minutes, right? Look, I'm not drunk. It's not vodka. It's not alcohol. I'm just thirsty. Hang on a sec. I said there was 4 things. 4 skills: control, pass, dribble, and shoot. There's only actually 2 things a player actually does. I'm going to tell you what they are. I'm just going to have another tip. When you're doing Zooms these days, you have to build a little bit of tension. That's what I'm doing. I'm building a bit of tension.
Oh, nice.
Are you ready? 2 things a player does for 90 minutes. I say he. It could be a woman too. See how? And then you've got to suspend the suspension with a little bit of political correctness. Political correctness. Right? Are you ready? Daz, are you ready for this?
I'm ready.
Okay. 2 things. A player gets the ball and a player gives the ball. Yes, he or she runs and shouts and says, give me the ball, you do this, you do that. The goalkeeper does that. Different. Every time, and there's only 2 things they do. They get the ball and they give it. Every time a player makes a mistake, it's because he or she hasn't controlled it quick enough or hasn't given it accurate enough or quick enough to a colleague. End of story. So if you can get quicker at getting that ball and giving that ball faster and accurate, you will be a better player on a daily basis. And you know what? There's another name for it. We call it skill. Why dress it up in a fancy name? You've made a mistake. How many mistakes do players make? And if that player's not left foot, he's made a dozen different mistakes because he's lost it on his left foot. How about he goes and practices with his left foot for a little bit? How much he get in a week? $150,000 pounds? And he just lost the ball 10 times on the left foot. In fact, yeah, I don't want to go on, but there's a fundamental for you. Nobody is interested in talking like this or hasn't been, because you might upset someone that's a sports scientist and he's getting paid. So he'll say, oh, well, that's not 100% correct according to the metric I'm using. Mate, well, I'll tell you about the metric, the Middlesbrough car park. I'll tell you about the baked beans. That was my metric. And it works. It works.
Well, it's interesting because I think that people will look back at this time under FSG and maybe some of their peers, the way they're looking at the game and changing it, kind of like when Arsene Wenger came into the Premier League. He changed the training regimens and the eating habits of players and their fitness levels. I think this is going to be a very seismic shift in how the Premier League works. But it all goes back to what you're saying. The heart, the work rate, those are some intangibles that still can't be, properly measured, right?
Yeah. Well, I wrote to Arsene Wenger 10, maybe 12 years ago. I was living in London at the time, and I've always got on well with Arsene Wenger. In fact, years ago, I was working in Germany at a place called Nuremberg in a factory called Adidas. And I had this idea for a new shoe, blah, 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 blah. Nobody believed it. Like They don't believe what I'm saying now, right? So I took the shoe and they said, oh, look, we've got some relationships with a bloke that's coaching Monaco, and he's quite scientifically minded. So I went down there and actually showed him the prototypes for the Predator boot. Do you know the Predator story?
No, we were going to ask you that eventually.
Yeah, okay. Well, I'm telling you. So
all right, let's go.
I took one of the prototypes from Germany. I was living in Nuremberg. I took it down to Monaco, and Arsene was very, very. Nobody had ever heard of Arsene Wenger at that stage in outside of France. And he said, no. He said, I see the science. It's more grip and it's more protection of the foot, so you can hit it harder. And farther. Anyway, he said, in top spin and back spin. I said, bingo. Top spin, back spin, just more grip on whatever the player wants to do. Right, the leather is slippery and with water on it, whereas rubber is grippy. So he helped me with it, and I could go back then to Germany with some recommendations from a manager, because I'd had plenty of players. Glenn Hoddle helped me with it. Johnny Barnes helped me with it. I tell you who was at Everton, a good lad, by the way, and we stir Everton up, but I love Everton, especially since Timmy Cahill came there, because Timmy's a dear mate of mine, and I love his heart and soul, And it was Mo Johnson. Remember Mo Johnson? Yeah. So Mo also helped me with the. And honestly, they tried the boot on, and they said, "No, that grips the ball and it protects that. We love it. So that's what actually sold the boot globally. The boot worked, but nobody believes it because people don't believe you. Because there's so many bullshitters in the world. They just think you're another bullshitter.
Yeah, but how did you go from playing football to designing a football boot? That's trying to figure out that transition.
El Presidente, you'll get it in a heartbeat. I tell you what, a journalist, when I retired, I retired early at 27. I was living for a while in Dublin, and a journalist said, "Look, I'm going to buy you a pint of Guinness. I heard you like Guinness, So he took me to the pub and he asked me exactly the same question, and he said, "How can a footballer become an inventor?" I said, "Mate, well, that's why you've got it completely wrong. I'm an inventor who became a footballer." And he twigged, and he said, do you twig?
Do I what?
Twig. If you twig, I'm an inventor.
No, I get it.
I shouldn't have been a footballer. I figured it out.
Yeah. Nice. Makes sense.
Science, data, it all makes sense. This is the point. In a world full of bullshitters, stick to the truth.
Yeah, my son. I told my son I was speaking to you because he's a big fan of the Predators. I said, "Hey, I was telling him about you coming on, and he was very excited." So that's when I was looking at the screen. I was telling him that you're on. So yeah. Good. Small world, eh? Small world. But the funny thing is the whole concept of the Predator boot, right, for me was easy because I'd spend most of my life in a car park figuring out what part of foot on what part of ball to what effect. So therefore, the whole Predator idea was born of that where backdrop. And it just took some kids in Australia that said the obvious one day when I was coaching them, right, that where I put two and two together, because years before I'd worked with sandpaper, right, before I, did the table tennis bat construction prototypes. I'd worked with sandpaper, which if you kicked the player in the face, gave him a bit of a rash, by the way. Next question.
This is defo gonna have to be like two-part series. I know Steve wanted to ask you. Go ahead, Steve, because that was like 10, 15 minutes ago. right?
Well, no, I would just wanted to ask you your thoughts and feelings going into what you knew was your last game with Liverpool, that that final against Wimbledon. Obviously didn't go the way we wanted it, but just kind of take our listeners and viewers through your thought processes going into that game.
Oh, you know what? It was a really tumultuous, literally game-changing. It was a horrible time for me. It was probably the saddest moments of my life, because my sister was in hospital. She'd come out of a coma, but she was in a vegetative state, and that sort of took away something from me that was hard to put back. And I was only 27, and I knew I was going to retire and walk away from the game. And I knew that my last game ever of football, I've never played since. I knew the last game I would ever play in my life as a 27-year-old, I knew it was coming for an end, let's say next weekend. And what happened was, back in the day, there was a lot of phone tapping going on. Mobile phones were in their infancy. Anyway, for whatever reason, next thing you know, the Sun newspaper phones me and says, "You're retiring." I said, "What?" They said, "You're retiring." And I said, "How you know that?" They said, "Don't you worry how we know it, but we're running a big story on the weekend." I said, "You can't do that. You can't do that." And knowing the culture of the club so well, and knowing Kenny so well, and his job in life as the manager, right? I said, you cannot do this. You cannot do. And I pleaded, I bargained, I actually swore at them as well, right? Not to run the story, because I knew what would happen. And what happened. Is next thing I know, they ran the story, I pack in or something like that. And it was all because I had to go because of Faye, and I had to be with her, and see her out of coma, see her, come alive again. And they ran the story, and Kenny phoned me and he just said, "What are you doing? Blah, 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 blah." He said, "You're not playing." So I'm 27, and now I'm never going to play again for Liverpool or anyone ever. So not playing that last game was really, really, really hit me hard. I've never talked about it either. In fact, I've never talked about a lot of this stuff. Maybe it's time, huh?
Well, that's why we have the format of our show that we have. We want to hear stories that aren't necessarily in books or written by others. We want to hear it from you.
Honestly,
so we appreciate you. Appreciate you sharing with us. Obviously, we can still tell it's still a very emotional subject. So, but I did want to ask you about it. So, thank you for sharing.
Yeah. So, the media back then, and funnily enough, I spent yesterday with my sister and my mum, and my sister is still in a vegetative state. She can't talk, she can't walk, and mum to this day, looks after her every day and cares for her, and that's my biggest regret, that I didn't finish my career, because I kind of just figured out how it works, and how to really, really be a Liverpool player, and what the brand really meant, especially the supporters. And I learned a lot from Hillsborough and Heysel afterwards, and what it means to community. And like I said to you, from day one, when an Aussie lands in the middle of Middlesbrough, right, on the other side of the world, 12,000 miles away, summer here, middle of summer, height of summer, roasting hot, outdoors, to the middle of freezing cold north of England. What a culture shock. And then to go to a city like Liverpool, a unique city like Liverpool, completely unique. You know, those Scousers, mate, I'm telling you, they're something else. Well, you know, you're around them all the time. You know, couple of mates of mine. I'll finish off on Faye. So Faye, yeah, she's still, you don't know whether she recognises you or not. Sometimes you think she's she's smiling at you, and she's not. So you live in hope, and you know, mum's the real hero because you know, it's like yeah, she's my sister, but she's my mum's daughter, and it's still tough on mum. Anyway, so that's poor old Farfy, and I couldn't do anything, and I'm glad I retired, but I didn't get to play out my football career because I'd have really figured it out in the end, really figured out. But you know, I've done other things, and maybe if I'd gone all the way, then I'd have got soft, and I wouldn't have done the Predator, and I wouldn't have done a whole bunch of television stuff. I got into television production and you know, other stuff. You know, and I want to make the movie, the story. I want to do it. You know, so I just feel blessed. Like I've had 4 or 5 unbelievable chances at life, and I've had 4 or 5 careers. Yeah. You know, and I've lived in 4 or 5 countries and 4 or 5 cities, unique cities. I lived in Boston for a long time after Nuremberg. I kind of got shafted by Adidas. There's another story. Yeah. After I, you know, took them from bankruptcy. They were bankrupt when I joined them. So I did a deal with them that suited them, you know. And then when they floated, you know, for $1.5 billion, you know, years later, they just elbowed me out the door. So I went to Reebok, and I worked in Boston for Reebok for a long time. I lived in Boston, which was magic. You know, and then you know, then I went to Dublin because although I wasn't working with Adidas, I still had royalties because Adidas never owned the Predator. I owned the patents to the Predator. So yeah. So I lived in Dublin because the Irish had this wonderful tax royalty. If your income was derived through publishing, then you could get it tax-free as long as you employed Irish kids coming out of university, which I did. I had, you know, factory there and stuff like that, you know, manufacturing stuff. So I lived in Dublin. My kids grew up in Dublin. Paddies are great. You know, I think the Scousers are half Paddies, you know. I think that's connections there, definitely. And I lived in Germany. I lived in France. I lived in France for 1.5 years when I was actually building the prototypes to take to Adidas and getting the patents nailed down. Lived in Middlesbrough, obviously, from 15 to 20. Liverpool from 20 to 27. Back to Australia, God's country. And, mate, I just lived this incredibly lucky life. And I just feel that as sports people, that's people that get paid for playing sports are the luckiest people in the world. And we've got a responsibility to give back to the game and with our mates, right? The game that's given us so much and give us this extraordinary opportunity to meet people like Rod Stewart and Elton John, who were the, you know, and Eric Clapton. They were the people of the day. Bob Geldof. I did a couple of projects with Bob Geldof, you know, and, mate, you know, people talk about the FA Cup final in Everton, and when Everton scored the first goal, and I was talking about it with some old blokes in town this morning. Went for a cup of coffee, and they were talking. They all sat here because it was 2:00 in the morning, and Everton all went ahead in the cup final in '86, right? And then Rushy scored, and then I scored.
You did, yeah. Right.
But it was a tap in. But the key thing is I jumped up in the air and I said, I've done it. And
iconic.
Rushy rushed over and Ronnie Whelan I'm like, I've done it. And they were going, all right, we scored a goal, but relax, you know. And I didn't mean I'd scored a goal. I meant I got out of that hospital bed with my legs intact, you know. I've come to England despite Jack Charlton. I've badgered my parents to sell their house. You know, I've figured it out. You know, I've you know, that game was horrific because there was a bloke called Big Ass fullback, mean as all mother hens. You'll figure his name out in a minute. Left fullback, used to play for Forest, England stalwart, like a real macho bloke, left fullback, and he could kick you over the fence. Big, stocky, right, tough, hard as nails, but a wonderful footballer too. Anyway, we'll find his name, but he hounded me. Because I thought I had an engine and I thought I was fit. But everywhere I went, this bloke followed me, this fullback, and you know, tried to kick, you know, lumps out of me. So I thought this is going to end in tears, and you know, Kenny's going to haul me off. So I thought, you know, I've got to do something here, you know. Anyway, the key thing is that when the ball went Pat Vanden Hauwe.
Yeah, big bastard.
Hello. I'm glad you said it, not me. Big tough bastard. Right, good lad. We know that. But you don't want to play against him, right, in an FA Cup final. But there was this one moment when both of us, I ran back to help Barney Rubble or whoever it was. It wasn't Barney, being Stevie Nicko, sorry. I run back, you know, to help Stevie Nicko out. Right, and all game, wherever I went, he matched me for heart and lungs, right? And not many people could do that ever. That was a given. That was my thing in life. Was just run till other people dropped. So anyway, so I ran back there, and then I saw that Mulby had a chance of getting the ball up there. So I took off, and for probably the only time in the game that Pat didn't come with me. Right, well, he did, but he was that far behind. So once again, we're up here, and Kenny went to backheel it. Mulby tried to square it across the face. Kenny tried to backheel, went through his legs, came to me, and I thought, stop. Right, I honestly thought, stop. And they talk about athletes in the purple patch and the, you know, and it's like almost the whole world slowed down. And I thought, you're kidding me. Lovely man was off his line. Lovely bloke, Welsh. I love him. Everybody loves him. The goalkeeper. God, senior moments. Anyway, it'll come to me, right? So he's off his line. I thought, Kenny's going to miss this. I said, Pat Vanden Hauwe's behind me for the first game, and I could see, right, all the crowd behind. I thought, so all I got to do, you're not going to believe this, El Presidente. You know what I said to myself? What part of foot on what part of ball to what effect? And I thought, well, if I hit it about there with the inside of my foot, it'll go in.
Data.
And it did, right? And it was quiet, like I couldn't hear anything. Like the world slowed down, but then it erupted with the red supporters, erupted the whole stadium. And then the boys come, and that's what I did it. I hit that part of the ball because I've done it thousands of times in the Middlesbrough car park. And that's when I was screaming, I've done it. It wasn't upscored, you know. And that was the story.
Yeah. You know, you have done it, and you've done so many things. It's funny because as we're preparing for the show, Daz and I are like, there's a lot of things to talk about. And of course, they're so interesting. But we'd be very remiss if Daz didn't talk to you about or ask you a question about a certain song.
Sure.
Yeah. Sure. Come on. Well, did you jump up and down when you finished that song and say, I did it? I mean, where'd you get the idea, just to like, you know what? Let's do a song for the 88 Cup final.
Well, Daz, where do you think I got the idea from?
Well, I know you got it from up here, but...
No. Think about everything I've said today. Think about common sense. So I'm an Aussie,
mm-hmm.
and every day I'm in a dressing room. And who's in the dressing room?
Barnsley.
Yep. Ex-Jamaican. Yep.
Yep.
Yeah.
Bruce.
Zimbabwean. Keep going.
Yeah. Molby. You got
Denmark. Keep going.
Whelan. Irish.
Yep. Keep going.
Yeah.
McMahon. English.
Yeah. Hanson.
Scottish.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hang on. I go. Now we got 7. Where do you think I got the idea from?
From those players.
Well, from the crack in the dressing room.
All the culture.
The crack in the dressing room. And we were the best team in the world.
Okay.
Right? Why? I'm telling you, the crack, the boyish spirit of respect for each other. And that dressing room was a savage place. You would get savaged if you stepped out of line and thought you were clever, or thought you were smart, or thought you were pretty, right? They would hammer you, right? So that was the culture of the dressing room. And I thought, well, everyone was doing blue is the colour. There was this weird song by Diamond Lights, it was called, by the 2 Spurs guys, Hoddle and Waddle. Diamond Lights, it was kind of a song. Anyway, it was a weird song. And I thought, look, someone's got to do better than that. And I loved Run DMC, and rap hadn't really hit England. And I loved Walk This Way, and where music was. I love my music, where it was headed. And I thought, well, I'm going to write a rap for the dressing room and get the players to rap it. That's exactly what happened. So I did, and it came for the cup final. Came to the cup final, right? One of the cup final.
80.
Anyway, 80 what?
88.
88. That was it. And anyway, it could have been number 1, but Madonna, Like a Virgin, came into the charts. Yeah, we got to number 3. Yeah. But it was about the spirit of the dressing room, and funnily enough, it was a bit sad at the time. But it's become more popular and more and more as rap's really evolved now. The older it gets, the trendier it gets. So once again, I was too far ahead of my time. But when me and Bruce get together, we have fun with it. We have fun with it, and
I bet.
Well, ice old sound as a pound. I'm custy, lad. There's nothing down. The rest of the lads ain't got it sussed. You'll have to learn them to talk like us. Poor God.
Yeah. Aldo, right? Yeah, it was Aldo and Ablett and
McMahon.
McMahon, yeah, the 3 Scousers in the team. Yeah. I mean, I remember when I first heard it, I was just like,
what?
This is great. I mean, obviously the critics thought it was, crap.
Yeah.
But the Liverpool fans just took to it. Well, that's the thing about Liverpool too. Music and footy go hand in hand. They just do.
Always. I got a mate here who's Italian, and anyway, he got this big boat, and he was take me out on Sydney Harbour, and we were getting drunk, and he's a mad red. He loves Liverpool. Adrian Moretta's his name, and he knows some of the Scousers now. And he said, these Scousers are different, aren't they? I said, different. And he said, well, what's different about them? I said, well, he said, but just give me the headlines. I said, look, there's 3 or 4 currencies, that they deal in. I said, one's music, right? I love their music and the creators. I said, 2's football. I said, number 3, a sense of humour, right? I said, and if you ever go there, watch your pockets. I said, so there's 4 things that they major in, you know. And I said, no, all with a sense of humour. I said, you can have all the money if you want in the world in Liverpool, but you're not respected unless you're good at all 4 of those. All 4 of those things, and we were joking about the last one, kind of. Anyway, so he's always he texts me now and again. He's always reminded me of it, you know. And it's sense of humour though, and it's perspective. And if you can lighten everything to a gag, that's what I found was beautiful about, you know, the Scouse way of life. They'll always, and loyalty, you know, and then people here, and I know I'm going on, and I didn't directly answer your question, but then I get journalists all the time here, you know, you'll never walk alone, and you know, they ask me why Liverpool Football Club is so special, right, and why it's different to Manchester or Chelsea or Spurs. I said, well, it's actually not about football, right, the game. I said it's about the Scousers, because the Scousers have a story, because they're unique people. And it's how those unique people interpret the people that come into their city and represent their livelihood and their brand on the field. And, you know, the Shanklyisms on top of that. And, you know, it's that which, why the story. Yeah. So these Aussies and these people from outside of the world that don't know really about football, but don't also know about other country culture because they haven't lived there. And I have, and I say, here's my take on it. It's actually not football. And Shankly got that, as I said to you early on in the piece. Give me an army of Scousers and I'll give you an army to beat the bloody world. Mm-hmm. And by the way, you know, there's Shanklyisms all through the Anfield Rap. Did you know that?
I knew, I'd heard about, you know.
Yeah, the Shanklyism. No, listen, if you listen to the Anfield Rap, Bill Shankly's voice is in there, you know. And, you know, a couple of the players have asked me to do a new one.
Oh.
Yeah. Which, I don't have time, but I'm working on a few things, including the next Predator, by the way. And yeah, but I'll get to the Anfield Rap. And by the way, when they came out here, the 4th time, they finally understood that there's a huge following here, right? A huge following here in Australia for Liverpool. Can I ask you a question? Do you know the biggest crowd ever to watch Liverpool play and where it was?
Melbourne.
Bingo.
100 and something thousand, right?
Yeah, Melbourne.
That was awesome.
Yeah, it was awesome. And I was on the field with Rachi, and I did a little walk around. But no, that there's a huge following here. Sorry, what was the question you asked again? Yes. Senior moment, Biden moment.
Yeah, I know. Again and again. I was going to ask you, because how did you get the sample cleared for the Beatles?
Well, I think I did it with Virgin Records to start with, and I worked with the only person in England at the time that was doing it was doing rap. There's only one, and his name was Eric B.
Yeah.
Right. So Eric B, I brought him up to Liverpool, right, and between us we came up with that and I think because it was Virgin, and I know who is it that owns? Oh, Michael Jackson, right, owns the Beatles stuff, and then his record label, whatever. But I'll tell you the same story in reverse. Listen to this, because you can help me with this, right? You can help me with this. I was at home on a Sunday night, And I got a phone call out the blue from Johnny Barnes at home in England when I was living down in London, in Buckinghamshire. And he was at where England used to train. They booked a recording studio, and he was with the band New Order, right? And he phoned up. He said, Craig, or Kruggy was my nickname. Long story, but apart from Skippy, there was Kruggy. Kruggy, he said, we've got a problem. We're doing the England song, right, with New Order, right, and it's a nightmare. It's rubbish, and we can't do it. So it wasn't far from me, a couple of miles actually. I was living in Lane End, so I raced over there on the Thames. Where do England train? Bisham Abbey. Oh, and the goalkeeper's name was Neville.
Southall. Yeah.
Neville Southall. Thank you. Okay, well done. Well, we get there in the end. Mate, I've had a whole bunch of radiation cancer stuff, so I forget it for a bit and then it comes back. So
like a boomerang.
Like a boomerang, mate.
Oh,
that's right. That's right. Like, do you know what, El Presidente? There was a nightclub in Liverpool called a Boomerang. I kept getting thrown out.
But you kept coming back.
There you go.
Nice one.
Anyway, they've opened a new restaurant there. You should never tell Liverpool gags to Liverpudlians, but El Presidente does know about this one. They've opened a new Chinese restaurant there in Liverpool. You know what it's called?
Mm-mm.
You'll Never Walk Alone.
Nice. I'm sure.
Anyway. Well, what was I saying? I was like, oh yeah, here's one in reverse. So I shot over there to Johnny Barnes, and he's got I think Chris Waddle, Peter Beardsley, himself, and a couple of other players, and they're in the studio, and they can't sing, right? So they've got this song, right, and they've played the tape, and they said, look, we can't do that. And the New Order guys, really nice guys, forget the names right now, another senior moment.
Bernard Sumner.
What's that?
Bernard Sumner.
Probably, and Lily Allen's dad, right?
He's the lead singer of New Order.
Well, there you go. And good lads, and I've had a few nights out with them since. And so they said, look, we just figured out that they're all tone deaf. They can't sing. And I said, yeah, I know. I know. That's why we did a rap last time rather than singing Blue Is the Colour or, any of that other rubbish, And they said, oh, well, what are we going to do? And Digger Barnes said, well, why don't you write a rap? I said, okay. So I grabbed a, envelope, literally. I said, get me a pint of beer, right? And immediately catch me if you can, because I'm the England man, and what you're looking at's the master plan.
Yeah.
I said, what's the lyric for the song, and what's the the melody? And they hummed it, and I said, okay, and that's how it came. So I wrote it. I said, there it is, and I sang it straight away. It took 15 minutes to write the whole thing. Anyway, so years later, right? So the record comes out, right, and it's co-written by Craig Johnston, right? It's on the record. So it goes to number one, for how long? Because it was the playing for England, you're singing the song, and then Digger comes on, catch me if you can, blah, 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 blah. So anyway, I'm thinking, the royalty should be arriving any moment. Right, I co-wrote it, right? And they never came. So I said, well, they're good lads. Margaret, doesn't matter. And then, right, years later, the World Cup that's just gone, or the one where were European Championships, World Cup, Snickers, Mars Bar, they're using the song, right? So Mars Bar will be paying somebody. I'm not getting paid. Anyway, I'm just saying, if there's any New Order folks out there listening, Craig, right, Australia, right? Just don't forget your mates. Anyway, that's all I'm saying. Anyway, ask Digger about that. Ask Digger about the Anfield Rap, and yeah, it was a lot of fun. A lot of fun.
You know, I don't know what I was supposed to do. We actually brought him to Austin. He did we had a John Barnes Legends Night with him, and we had almost 400 people, you know, attend. And he's so verbose, you know, he has so many things to talk about. We didn't even get to the Anfield Rap.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
we'll have to invite him over again.
Yeah, he's a lovely man, Jono, and you know, I was an odd person in the dressing room. Bruce was an odd person, you know, because there's so many typecast footballers, and you could typecast them, right? And it's that hard upbringing that they've had, and their parents have had, right? And you know, Digger's not like that. Bruce is not like that. I'm not like that.
Right.
And at Bruce's testimonial, at there's a hotel, lovely hotel in Liverpool next to the railway station. What's it called, Daz? Adelphi Hotel.
Adelphi, yeah.
It was Bruce's testimonial. So I was living in Australia at the time, but he invited me back to Liverpool to talk at his testimonial because I was his room partner. And I said it was because you had that many foreigners, number one. You know, when foreigners, they were ostensibly Jocks and Celts and the Irish and the Welsh and then us. I said, but it was the magic, which is why I wrote the Anfield match. It was the magic of the friendship and the respect for each other that we had that made us run the extra mile for each other on the field. And it didn't. It came back from the Shankly philosophy through the Paisleys and the Fagans and even Roy Evans later on, because he was part of that original crew. And but you know, to this day, I laugh at some of the things that went on in that dressing room. You know, and it was before social media. It was before iPhones. Right. So it was pure, and it was, I'm going to say a strange word to you, right? But it's a word that stands for all of those blokes back then. And you mentioned Phil Neal in particular as well. They were all gentlemen, which is a word you don't hear too often.
Yeah.
You know, and funny. The fun was the currency, and taking the Mickey out of the likes of Bruce and myself, and the other ones, that other players that weren't specifically like they were, you know, and like everything, there was a politics in the dressing room, right? And you'll love this story. It's just a quick one, but I think it was part of why everybody got on so well. Because we were different. By the way, not a whole lot of love lost between the Jocks, by the way, and each other. Like too much same of the same kind. And every one of them was Braveheart. So Alan was the most, let's say, gracious in talking and explaining things. The other two were, you know, there were several fights between Suey and Graham, Suey and Kenny in the dressing room, but all about performance, by the way. You know. Anyway, what I'm saying was there was this magic in the dressing room because Bruce was there. And if it hadn't have been for Bruce, then you've got a dressing room full of these incredibly professional people. Think about it. Yeah. Right? I've got something. I'll tell you what happened. I'll tell you the exact story that happened. Right, so Bruce had never been to Australia, and he was here before COVID. So let's say 2.5 years ago. Never been on Sydney Harbour, so took him out on Sydney Harbour, and then he said, "Will you come and watch my show at the Anfield hideout in Sydney?" So I said, "Yeah, of course I will." I said, "But I need to hide in the corner, right, and listen to you, because I want to listen to you rather than talk about you, you know." So anyway, I listened, and it was magic. It was Bruce on real form. And then they asked me to get up and stand something. And if I don't have to, I don't talk that much. I stay out the way. And as you know, I've got an opinion, but Bruce, I had to talk about it. And I told him this story about the Adelphi Hotel and his speech. And I found a lot of that success to that goalkeeper and that man because of what I've said to you. You need different people in the dressing room from different cultures, because Bruce was the butt of a lot of jokes, right? And they all had this great community because there was definite clique. There was two cliques, and there was the Clever Clogs Southport gang, you know, Kenny and Jockey and all of that. Then there was the Idiots, which was me and Bruce and little Paulie Walsh and Johnny Walk. You know, we were the Tubes. They called us the Tubes. So there was the Clever Clogs who picked the team and whether you're in a team. And obviously I wasn't one of them because I got dropped a lot. I didn't like it. But anyway, so I started, and I'll finish the Bruce story. So what I'm saying is that if Bruce Grobler and he's like hadn't have been in that dressing room, we wouldn't have been half the team that we were, because it was about fun and vibrantness. And Bruce is a beautiful human being. You've interviewed him, you know, and he's got this wonderful way of being a clown, and that was his nickname, blah, blah, blah. But he's just a beautiful, beautiful guy. And he sort of was this, he was the steam vent that they would wind him up, because Bruce would come in the dressing room, right, and he'd have sunglasses on, right, and he was driving his car in the middle of the winter. He'd have his sunglasses on, right, so all the jocks, they'd wink to each other and go, so everything would go quiet, and then Souness would say, "Hey, Brucey, what have you got the sunglasses on for?" "Oh, what sunglasses? What sunglasses?" You know, like that. So Bruce would stretch the truth sometimes. Why? You know, to be liked. Some people stretch the truth. So Bruce would, yeah, like that. He'd say, "Oh, you know, I forgot I had them on." "Yeah, but the sunglasses." So Suey'd go on, or Kenny would jump in. "Yeah, but the sunglasses in the middle of winter. Who are you trying to impress?" You know. And Bruce would say, "Oh, no, well, actually, I need them for reading. Their prescription glasses." So all the jocks would go, you know, right. And then Stevie Nicol or someone, prescription. Well, who's your doctor then? "Well, you know, my eye doctor." "Oh, got an eye doctor. Got an eye doctor." So he'd get himself deeper and deeper into the mire. "What's his name?" Right. And then he said the name of a doctor. And Bruce said, "Hey, that's my eye doctor too." He said, "I phoned him yesterday. You don't have a prescription. You're bullshitting." Anyway, can you imagine, right? And we're playing Man United on the weekend. Can you imagine? Like, look, I've got tears because I'm laughing because it's funny. Mm-hmm. It's funny. It was funny back then, and poor old Bruce had dug himself into a hole. But if Bruce wasn't there, they'd be teasing somebody, and it'd be each other, because, you know, but that spark of funniness, you know, is found. So anyway, what I said was at the Liverpool Supporters Club in Sydney, I said, if you think about it, I've just said something. Now, you may or may not believe that or think that was part of the success. I said, but I've got a little interesting thing for you to think about. I said, if you think about the 4 or 5 jocks that are in there, Stevie Nicol, Graham Souness, Alan Hansen, Kenny Dalglish, right? And there was a few more, a couple of others. Johnny Walk, hello, right? Maybe Walk and Souness weren't there at the same time. One was put, forgive that. But the point is, at the very same time that Liverpool is winning everything with those 4 or 5 players, backbone of our team, same players are playing together in the Scottish team and winning nothing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I think to myself that there was something beautiful about our dressing room that money can't buy, like a Abramovich or a Saudi or or even the recent what's going on money can't buy that genuine currency.
Camaraderie. Yeah.
Camaraderie. Thank you. Lovely word. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well,
Because I think the same kind of atmosphere that was created when you're playing, I think the current team has that as well. They're gentlemen. They seem to really get on with each other.
You got some jokers though. Robbo.
There's some jokers. Robbo's probably the Bruce on this team, right? Before that, it was Lovren. Probably before that, it was Moreno, right? So there's always that one person that has to keep the levity of the group because they're all type A. They're high achievers, obviously. So you need that. And chemistry, I think, sometimes is underrated for success of sports teams.
Say that again. Say that again, mate. You're 100% right. That's where the rich ground is.
Mm-hmm.
And people like Arsene Wenger and people like Jurgen Klopp understand that. And the funny thing is, I completely understand it. I've just said it. And maybe that other people won't agree with me. Like, I care about that now at 60 years of age. But, it's just funny how it works. And I still now and again speak to Kenny or Graham or Jockey. He's a wonderful human being as well. They all are. But believe me, they're all great. And they worried about me. I was sick recently, 4 years ago, and they all came over to America when I was living in Orlando and spent time with me. Mind you, I was living on a golf course and they're Scottish,
Mm-hmm.
so I think there could have been other genders at play, but there you go.
As we kind of wind down, it seems like, we've had the luxury of either interviewing on our podcast or bringing into our supporters club. We've had Gary Gillespie, we've had Stephen Nicol, Ronnie Whelan, Bruce, obviously, Alan Kennedy. We've had, it seems like that whole generation. You guys have this camaraderie, but it's also the stories that you guys can tell. And there's a definite affection for each other. You never hear
a bad word.
Well, I mean, when you do hear a story, but there's always, it's tongue in cheek, right? But there's a positive spin on it that we thought there was a negative aspect to the story, but it turned into a positive because we won this game, or it got us through Hillsborough, or it got us through something else. So I don't think you get that a lot in most teams these days, because it seems like as soon as somebody leaves a team, then you're reading about what their true feelings are, on Twitter or in some kind of news article. So like I said, as we're closing, I just wanted to say, thank you for sharing your stories, however personal they were, but it's just been so great to spend this time with you.
Yeah, likewise. Well, like I said, I don't talk about it that much, and I like to stay out the way. I agree with what you say about Jurgen Klopp and his intelligence. He knows it's emotional intelligence as well as technical intelligence. And I had a lovely conversation with him when they were over here the last time about the data and how within every player there's 3 or 4% of untapped potential. Mm-hmm. Even Lionel Messi, he said, yeah, come over and we'll talk about it, because, as I said to you, there's 100 things, and I've written this up. It's to a player's performance on a weekend, 100 things, right? And then there's the next weekend, there's 100 things. And you can look at the difference in those and say, okay, and whether it's emotional, it's physical, it's a combination of that, or it's the fun and the love they have in their heart for the people they're playing with, and the management team. It's really, really interesting. So Jurgen said for sure, and I want to follow up and do that. and pass on the Middlesbrough car park secrets to the academies. I really want to do that because I have a real affinity still for the town. And again, I call it the story. These journalists talk about all these other clubs. Why is this Liverpool? And why that song? And why is everybody going on about Liverpool rather than some? Because it's not about football. It's about how the people that live in the town see football. I said, and there's another team, Everton. So it's good to talk about it. So I'm thanking you for inviting me on.
We started this thing as kind of a project to get us through COVID times when we couldn't meet. And now here we are 100 episodes later. We get to have a legend of Liverpool with us, and we just want to thank you. We want to thank all of our previous guests who have made this podcast, grow exponentially since we started. And we get to hear all the stories about Liverpool. We've learned so much about the culture of the city, the history. And so we, on behalf of Daz and I, we just want to tell everyone that watches us and listens to us that we really appreciate them and continue with us along the journey because we have a lot more stories to learn about and to tell.
Yeah.
Magic. Well, thank you, boys.
No, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. Well, you have an amazing story. This is the city and the club and a history, and it's real. And you've had some wonderful people there and gentlemen. And we got to keep it sacrosanct.
When you're ready for your next endeavor, I'm available for consultancy. I'll be there.
All right. Okay. We'll edit that last little bit out when I said I've got a solution.
Yeah. I put my MBA to use for some reason.
There you go. Well, thank you, boys. Lovely to speak to you and share some ideas and some emotions.